I am truly alone here. Harad cities elude me amongst the endless sand. Finally, I arrive at the outpost, yet there is something wrong.
All right, mate. So yeah, I ran out of time for the intro, but I promise you it was going to be sick. I was going to be like chased by these two assassins, you know, they're close behind, but they can't get me because of my level of subterfuge and my sheer acrobatic ability. I was going to do a backflip, probably, maybe, and then, you know, I was going to put my consciousness into a hawk. The hawks from above, you can see the whole city, do you know what I mean? Because of my magical ability. This is what I made. I'm not going to show you all because I want you to stay to the end. Didn't have much of a plan. I just had sand and a can-do attitude. Well, not a can-do attitude, but some time. No, come on. This is going to be good. You and me. Let's just get. Come on, mate.
I usually display my finished works on these boring chipboard shelves, and I was sick of looking at them, and I wanted to make one really deserty. I want this to double up as a little skirmish board maybe as well. So I took it outside, a little prime, and then covered it in PVA so that I could put this sand on it, funnily enough. I then sprayed it with my homemade sealant and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to break the surface tension, which will mean it'll seep into the sand, and when it's dry, it'll be solid. I then did a side spray of desert sand. I also wanted to bring these old bases up to date and bring them closer to the colour of the board, but also bring the colour of the board closer to the bases, so there'll be a sort of midway between the two, because the one's looking a little bit too orange and the other a bit too bleached. So hopefully with a little bit of push and pull I'll be able to do that. So first with this wash, and then I decided to do that to all of these buildings and bits of terrain that I have, and it ended up being a lot of terrain and a lot of bits and bobs. So this board will be quite full of things. There'll be a sort of outpost's worth of terrain and buildings. Now, I loves me a little bit of dry brushing, so I thought I'd get some ivory and do that over the top. And it made barely any difference at all, and we've still got a discrepancy between the base and the board. No thank you. Sorry, it was a bit aggressive. Now, I decided to get a little bit of PVA and get a little bit of the sand on there to start to try and blend the two together, and obviously a little bit of sealant over the top. Then I realised I had to do that over all these ones as well. But because I was bored of that, I thought, nah, I'm just going to do some buildings instead. Starting with this awesome fountain, it's definitely my favourite. So just getting the PVA along the edges of things where sand would collect in the wind, in the desert wind, and then sprinkling sand over the top and then sealant again. I zenithal primed these buildings earlier in the year with black and then bone colour over the top, which is why they're half done. So we're going to have to add some detail now, and there's a lot of windows here, so we're going to get some black, contrast black legion in this case. It flows on nice and easy into the windows, and it dries nice and quickly too. So we're just going to go across all the windows and paint them black essentially. It's quite, could be seen as quite boring, but I find it quite zen. And once the windows are done, it's far more readable to the eye. So we're going to take some platter silver and do all of the metal bits. These are FDM printed buildings, and they're from the Ivory City set that you can get on My Mini Factory, and I'll leave some links in my description. If you're insane enough to print the whole set, it is a massive Gondorian style fortress that's fully modular. I have no space for that kind of insanity, but if you go over to Benji's Hobbies, he has a video where he makes almost the whole thing, and it's crazy, and it's where I got the inspiration to use this set. And we couldn't call this an outpost of Harad without liberally and fairly irresponsibly using gold everywhere and anywhere we can. So we're going to use it on the top bit. Does anyone know what this is called, this top bit here? I don't know. Looking pretty good at this point, but counter to what I've just said, I've been quite conservative with the amount I've got. Get that hair out of there. Thank you. And we're going to put some more gold on these side wings. Don't know what they're called either. So, leave that down in the comments if you know what these bits are supposed to be called. Don't really know much about architecture, it turns out, whilst doing this voiceover. So going to use some Agrax Earthshade to wash over all of the doors first. This adds weathering, a little bit of perceived detail, and some contrast all at the same time. So it's a nice solution, a nice quick solution for doing any terrain or buildings. I'm going to do the same over the roof, which I'd previously painted in a sort of terracotta colour, and this does the same thing. And I'm also going to do the same over all of the gold. Here we are again in the old vortex. Don't think about it too much, but it's basically a plane that exists outside of space and time, and it definitely isn't just my conservatory with the blue light on. It's a place for, you know, for me and you to just sort of catch up on what's going on with the channel. I might move back quite close to your face, sorry about that. I thought I'm not really wearing my hat, you know. Sorry, Millie. That's not right. So I've got my mate Millie here today. She's a cat of some kind. Millie, you got anything to say, mate? That is a good point, to be fair. I'm doing about 5 different projects at the same time. Some to try and get on the channel here. I'm doing this little Squirtle. So yeah, I've done I've Zenithal primed him so far, and that's for a project that I've got going on with Worcester Terrariums. So hello Ben.
Hello Ben, if you're watching, I am going to be there before the 27th, I promise.
I've also got another 10mm video coming up, absolute shit ton of orcs right next to me here. So I'll give you a sneaky peek on that just for you. Yeah, so sneaky peek there, can't show you too much. I want to give a massive shout out to my mate Connor, who saw me ogling at this dude. This is Kurdos Valentian, and Connor decided to donate this to the channel very kindly, so thank you, Connor. I don't usually do Age of Sigmar content, but if you want to see me paint this guy, then leave that down in the comments. Massive thank you to my Patreons who are supporting me through the early stages of my channel, and to be fair, quite a tricky time all round. If you'd like to support the channel and get access to behind the scenes content and much more, then follow the link in my description. Yeah, it's getting a bit strange in here now, to be fair, so yeah, let's get back to it. Adding gold now to the fountain. I wanted the fountain to be especially show-offy. I think that this fountain in particular would go back to the Númenórean period due to its sort of Gondorian looking design. And I wanted it to have a feeling that perhaps it was once magical in that kind of Tolkienian sense of magic, you know, kind of in a light way. But it's long since been left to the sands of time. But I think to the locale, it still has a great importance. So yeah, this was looking pretty cool, but I did think it needs some water in the fountain. So first of all, I took some Athematic blue contrast paint and added a sort of general base layer for all of it. I wanted to see through to some of the sandy texture at the bottom. Then I thought it'd be nice to dry brush up from there to kind of a more ocean sky looking blue, and then to a more of a grey blue. I'm just kind of working up here towards a white. Now I needed to add a little bit of contrast, a little bit of darkness, especially around the edges, give a sort of sense of depth and shadow. It was looking a bit too green to my eyes, so I added some Pilar Glacier, and it was starting to look really cool. I thought, yeah, okay, nice looking fountain. I thought the buildings were looking a little bit over clean, so I added some extra weathering here. I mixed some Agrax Earth Shade with Nazreg Yellow, and I think there was also some Reichland Flesh Shade in there as well. There's many ways to add weathering, and this is just the one that I happen to be doing at the time. So dry brushing now with an ivory, and this will just add that kind of really bleached desert look and give it a kind of sense of highlighting, give it a little bit more detail and pop on the tabletop. And we're going across all of the stone here. I do catch a little bit the swords and stuff, but that's fine. It just makes it look like it's been lost to the desert sand. And now just lighter gold colours to dry brush all of the gold. Again, just to make it look a bit lighter and pop a little bit more.
Now we're going to use Bugman's Glow to start off, and then moving up towards more vibrant red for the top piece. Not exactly sure what this is called. Again, maybe it's got the same name as what's on top of the roof. Again, if you want to let me know what that is, then please let me know in the comments section. And the same process on the terracotta roofs. Wanted to give it a kind of sense of like faded red, like originally perhaps it was terracotta painted in a vibrant red. And I was quite pleased with this. Again, a lot of this, I don't have an exact recipe for all these things when I start, but I do have a general sense of what's worked before. And I think dry brushing is a really nice, quick solution for doing terrain. With terrain, you can be a bit more broad strokes, be a bit more experimental, and get really good results. And I'm starting to get really happy at this point with how things are looking. Wasn't happy with the sand note, so I've got a skeleton bone to make it look more bleached. Again, from the side, it's looking far better now. Things are starting to match. I went on Amazon and got these absolutely terrible cheap trees. I'm going to deal with those later. Found these rocks as well, which happened to be in my garden, and they were perfect. And then dry brushing all of the bases, lots of bases to do. Again, there was a lot of push and pull here. Now, UV resin, this part was particularly fun. I wanted to experiment with this, I've had it for ages. So again, pouring it straight into what I'd painted earlier to look like water. And then using my UV torch, I'm curing the UV resin here. It did go a little bit weird, as you'll see in a second. There was a sort of cracking under the surface. I think I might have cured it too fast, or there might be an air or something. But as I got into that process, I found a sort of mad effect where I was able to get water coming out of the fountain spouts by shaping it, and ended up looking like this. So I thought, right, I'm going to do that with every spout. This was a very timely affair, but a very fun one at that. And you sort of slowly cure it. You have to be fast with the UV light, but slow with pulling it out, and you end up making an armature of sorts. And then you build it up and up and up. It can be tedious and time consuming, but I found it very fun and very zen. Right, back to these trees. We'll come back to the fountain later, see how that went. The trees were terrible. Had a lot of clipping to do, and I decided to basically paint them as if they weren't already painted because they were terrible. And this is quite easy, really, just using Steel Legion Drab. Wasn't exactly sure what to do with these, so I thought, well, I'll make the bases first using this XPS foam, cutting it with a knife. I don't have a particularly good hot wire cutter, so going at it with the knife was absolutely fine, just to get the basic shapes in order. Then using the wire cutter to give it the organic shapes that I want. This is a very satisfying process, but if you do end up doing this in your own projects, please wear a mask and be in a ventilated area. Priming the bases with Mod Podge and Burnt Umber. You can't spray these, it will melt it. And then using some stones to weigh it down. But first we're going to use some Agrax Earthshade to add a little bit of detail. Not going to go too crazy on this. It's just got to look acceptable. So yeah, the stones give it a little bit of weight, so they're not going to, fall down all the time. And then filling in the super glue with some sand, then the rest of it PVA glue, same as before, base of PVA, sand, then sealant over the top. Nice and easy palm trees, cheap palm trees. They're not going to look amazing, but they are going to be fine. And sometimes that's all you need. And when you're doing a lot of projects like I am, that is what I need. That's what I need. And there you go, look at that. Then dry brushing the trunks with kind of ivory colour mixed with brown, and then trying to remember which base is which, and then forgetting and just going with whatever. I've got this Arid base ready mix from Geek Gaming Scenics. I'm going to use some PVA, and I'm going to do some spots of this all over the base. It just kind of breaks up that sandy, deserty look and makes it look like somewhere where a palm tree might grow. Crazy that, right? And then, these were terrible, and I did a bit of dry brushing of some sort of lime greens over the top. It still looked pretty terrible, to be fair, not gonna lie. I was happy with how this came out. This was sort of a project between projects. I kind of wanted to finish something that I started a long time ago. I was really happy with the fountain, and it looks great wherever I put it. There were some bits that aren't so great, like the palm trees, but I mean, it just came together here and made it into a centerpiece of the board. And it was perfect for displaying my Harashin and my Hirondor ranges. And because the buildings and terrain pieces are still modular, I can display this in different ways or take it off and use it on the tabletop. I think I could even end up using this as a small skirmish board. But the big question is, does it fit back on my shelf, and does it work as a display board in that way? This is me for the first time very carefully putting it back on the shelf. And thankfully it fit perfectly. So, whew. And I carefully placed everything back on whilst thinking it would be amazing to do this with several different other biomes on this shelf. If I was going to take it further, I'd maybe get some sheets of acrylic or perspex or something to protect it from dust. If you'd like to see me paint the Harashin, or if you're interested in seeing how I did this giant 10mm Lord of the Rings army, you can click here.